Okay, before we start filling in the unit circle, we need to understand or look at the values of our sine and cosine for both a 45-45-90 triangle and a 30-60-90 triangle. So for the 45-degree triangle, that's an isosceles right triangle. If my hypotenuse is 1, if my hypotenuse is 1, then what I know is that a squared plus b squared is equal to 1 squared. And I know also that a and b are the same. So I can essentially write this as a squared plus a squared is equal to 1 squared. How do I know that they're the same? Because in an isosceles right triangle, the sides are the same. If your angles are the same, then the sides opposite are also the same. So that gives me 2a squared is equal to 1. A squared equals 1. So then each side, equals 1/2. So then each side is 1 over the square root of 2, which we typically write as radical 2 over 2. And so these sides are going to be radical 2 over 2 and radical 2 over 2. Okay, so if I think of just finding the sine of 45 degrees, then it's going to be opposite over hypotenuse, which will be radical 2 over 2 over 1, or just radical 2 over 2. And the cosine of 45 degrees is going to be the exact same thing. For this next triangle, let's say this is a 60-degree angle and this is a 30-degree angle. And let's say this side is 1. And let's say in this case our hypotenuse is 2. So I'm getting this angle from an equilateral triangle. If I have an equilateral triangle where all of my angles are 60 degrees, and then I decide to bisect it like this, that means, and let's say this side's 2, 2, 2, then if I bisect it, I'm dividing this both in half. And so if I wanted to look at the sine of 30 degrees, it's going to be the opposite side 1 over the hypotenuse, which is 2. And the cosine of 30 degrees, well, I need the adjacent side here. I need this adjacent side. So I'll use Pythagorean theorem. I know that 1 squared plus b squared is equal to 2 squared. So b is going to be equal to the square root of 4 minus 1, or b is equal to the square root of 3. And so the cosine of 30 degrees then is going to be the adjacent side over the hypotenuse, or the square root of 3 over 2. And then if I look at the sine of 60 degrees, now 60 degrees is my angle down here, so the opposite side is going to be the square root of 3 over the hypotenuse, square root of 3 over 2. And the cosine of 60 degrees, will be equal to the adjacent side, 1 over the hypotenuse, 2. So an interesting, notice that the sine of 30 is equal to the cosine of 60, and the cosine of 30 is equal to the sine. So that's called a co-function identity. And we'll come back to that later. We'll come back to the identities later. We're going to take these values for the sine and cosine of 30, 60, and 45 degrees and put them on the unit circle.